friends! Today I'm going to be reviewing the book Luster by Raven Leilani. Hi book friends! Welcome back to my channel, T Reads. Changed up my name to be a little bit more specific. I love books. I love buying them. I love reading them. I love smelling them when they're brand new. And I love discussing them. And so if you also love books and all things books, don't forget to subscribe below so that you don't miss any of my future videos. Alright, so I am going to be reviewing the book Luster by Raven Leilani. I actually received this book as a Christmas gift in the mail from a dear friend. It was a welcome and generous surprise. So I'm going to be giving a quick little synopsis of the book before I get into my review. This book is about a 23-year-old black woman named Edie. She has a admin job that's pretty decent. She lives in a pretty crappy, rundown apartment with her roommate, and she seems to also have a very active sex life. And then she gets into a relationship with a married older man, white married older man named Eric, who is in an open marriage. Eric and Edie, isn't that just so cute together? But it really isn't that cute. Edie clearly has a lot of issues, and her relationship with Eric definitely opens those issues up wide. In a strange turn of events, she actually loses her job and ends up moving in with Eric and his wife Rebecca and their black adoptive daughter named Akilah. She forms these really complicated, but I don't know, I'll just say complicated bonds with both the wife Rebecca and Akilah, the adoptive daughter. She continues her kind of somewhat toxic relationship with Eric, and she also struggles with finding and defining her art. She is a painter. So let's get into the review of the novel. This novel reminded me a lot of another novel I read recently called Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams. They're both about young black women who are unhappy, struggling with trauma from the past, and turn to relationships and sex as a coping mechanism, as a distraction, and it usually doesn't end up very well for them. Personally, I didn't enjoy the novel Queenie for a multitude of reasons that I'm not going to get into, but this novel, as similar as it seemed to Queenie, is better in my opinion than Queenie, but I still didn't really enjoy this novel, and I will get into why. The reason that I say that this book is better than Queenie in my opinion, even though they're kind of similar, and I didn't necessarily enjoy either one of them, but the writing is better in my opinion in this book than in Queenie's. I feel like Raven Leilani is a very talented writer. She uses language beautifully. Her writing is full of wit and humor, which I definitely enjoy. And so yeah, she's very talented. And I guess what I didn't really like about the novel is just the narrator, or maybe the narrative structure of the novel itself. To break that down further, so there is a lot of exposition in this novel, and you are very much in Edie's head throughout the novel and her observations of the world around her. Even when she's in conversation with people, all of those moments are, or most of those moments are just her observation of that interaction. And so there's very little dialogue, and I've mentioned it in earlier videos. I am a sucker for dialogue. I just think that if a book has a lot of text and prose, it can feel breathless, and so when you put in some dialogue, it gives the readers a moment to breathe and catch their breath. But there is not a lot of dialogue in this novel. It's a lot of exposition, and so that's just a personal taste for me. So take with that what you will. And personally, I don't think that the exposition worked in this novel to create a character that felt like a real person. There are other novels that I've read that have a lot of exposition, and they still manage to create a very like a very real character that I connected to and that I felt was actually fully realized. But I just felt like the exposition in this novel was really cold and detached, and so I didn't really feel anything reading this novel, and I like to feel connected to the character or feel what the character is feeling while we're going through her story. But I just felt it was really cold and detached. And you know what? Edie herself is kind of cold and detached in my opinion. And so maybe Raven Leilani did it on purpose to make us feel exactly how the character felt. But I just didn't think it made for a very enjoyable reading experience. I just didn't feel anything reading this novel. And Edie goes through a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff that would undoubtedly cause a lot of emotion. You know, she talks about how she's dealing with heartbreak, and she talks about her past with her situation with her parents, and she struggles when she loses her job, and she's kind of homeless for a moment there. She moves in with Eric. She struggles to find her place in this house, her relationship with Rebecca and Akila, and also her art, you know, is a very personal thing for her. And so all of these things would definitely create a lot of emotion in a person, but I didn't feel any of that emotion. It just kind of felt like nothing really affected the character of the story, and if it did, she was so kind of cold about it that it wasn't resonating with me. I just really think that dialogue could have worked in this novel to make Edie feel more human and real. I think that if I got to see how she interacted with other people, then she would feel less indifferent about everything going on in her life. Instead, most of her interactions were just her explaining the interaction to us, and what is being said is kind of summarized instead of like a back and forth. And I feel like dialogue can really make a person feel real. It can show us how they respond to people, how they speak to people, their dialect, their vernacular, you know, whatever slang they might use, and then it makes us feel like a real person. But I feel like that was desperately missing in the story, in my opinion. So Edie is 23 years old, and she's got to be the most self-aware 23-year-old I've ever read. She's extremely smart and observant, and I'm not even trying to be funny, like she's really, really, really observant. She seems to almost like psychoanalyze everyone around her, but at the same time she's also very self-destructive, and so it was really kind of interesting to read a character who was so self-aware but then also made a lot of choices that ultimately harmed her. She almost read as someone who was too smart for everyone around her, but at the same time she relied on everyone around her. And so in some ways it created a little bit of inconsistency. Just a little bit. It wasn't anything that I struggled with too much, but yeah, I definitely noticed that. I was like, damn, this girl's like the smartest 23-year-old I've ever known. But then at the same time, you know, she makes some really silly decisions that ultimately harm her throughout the novel. And so just to break down my summary of the character of Edie, I just felt like she was a little cold and detached and inconsistent at times to actually feel like an actual person. And I like for characters to feel like real people, you know. I don't want to feel like I'm reading fiction while I'm reading fiction, if that makes sense. And so I just felt like Edie didn't feel like a real person. I will say though that Edie's keen observation of the people around her made the characters around her feel like real people, ironically. What I mean by that is that, you know, her descriptions and her observations of people like Eric and Rebecca and Akila made them feel like real people, and I actually was really empathetic to each of those characters more so than Edie herself. For example, you know, Rebecca, even though I'm not in Rebecca's head, just based on the way that Edie is observing her, I fully understood what Rebecca was going through and how she felt about Edie's presence in their house. Similar to Eric, you can kind of understand the type of person Eric was just based on how Edie perceived him. You know, he was really charming and suave at the beginning, and then he became more and more like selfish and childish throughout, and you really got to feel like, oh yeah, this is a person, this guy Eric is a person that, you know, is real, like he's definitely out there in the world. And so same with Akila, you know, the way that she explains Akila's situation and who Akila is, you definitely feel like Akila is also a real person. And so it's kind of ironic that through Edie's observations, the characters around her felt real, but not Edie herself. And obviously this is more kudos to Raven Leilani's writing of being able to create all of these fully realized people. I just wish that Edie herself got the same type of attention, I guess, if that makes sense. What I think the novel did really well was explore race politics and race relations. You know, in the beginning, Edie is one of the 2 Black people in her workplace. Everyone else is white. It's her and another Black woman named Aria, and I think it was really smart how Raven explored that relationship. The way one behaves in relation to the other, you know, the way that one is compared in the office in relation to the other, and the fact that, like, there's almost this, like, unspoken competition between the 2 of them, and just based on the fact that they're both Black women, people compare them, and that is reality. That really does happen in the workplace. I could speak to that. I'm sure a lot of Black women can speak to that, or Black men as well. So I thought that that was explored really, really well. I also really enjoyed her exploration of Akila's situation, the adoptive daughter of Eric and Rebecca, who are both white, and they live in a predominantly white neighborhood, and Akila is the only Black person in that neighborhood. And so she's in this situation where she can't relate to anyone, and so when Edie comes into the house, they form this really strange, tender, but complicated relationship surrounding her hair and surrounding, you know, the outside world and how they're viewed. And I really loved that relationship. I think that it would have, I wish that it was explored and fleshed out even more in the novel, because it was one of the heart of the story, in my opinion. But yeah, I thought that that was done really well. I also strangely really enjoyed the relationship between Edie and Rebecca, because their situation is just so bizarre and at times seemed like utterly unbelievable and ridiculous. But the more you read it, the more you're like, okay, yeah, I can see this. I could appreciate and understand what this is. You know, they bond over their relationship to Eric and the person that he is to them. And I thought it was just touched me. So I felt emotion within that area of the story of these women forming these bonds. Even though Edie seemed kind of cold about it all, in my opinion, I definitely felt something in regards to how Rebecca was treating Edie and how Edie was responding to that. Okay, so on to my rating, which I feel bad about, but I give this novel a 2.5 out of 5. And, you know, I was gonna give it 3, but I had to really ask myself, you know, would I recommend this novel to people if they're looking for something to read? And it's not that I wouldn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't read this novel at all, but it wouldn't be on my top of the list novels, you know, is what I mean. And so I also don't think I will read this novel again anytime soon. So that's how I base my rating. And so also I just didn't feel a lot of emotion reading this novel, and that's why I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 5. Now, the writing itself is beautiful. Like, Raven Leilani is definitely talented. Like I've mentioned already, the language is beautiful, her wit and humor, and I just thoroughly enjoyed how she explored and observed the world. So if I was just going to be giving a rating based on the writing and the language and the way that she puts sentences together, I would give it a 5 out of 5. But based on storytelling and the character development of Edie, and the emotions that I didn't feel, I would have to give the novel a 2.5 out of 5. Take with that what you will, because if you just feel like reading something that's just very delicious to read the words, and you don't really care so much about plot or characterization maybe, give it a read. You will love reading the observations and the descriptions of things happening, and you will laugh for sure. But other than that, 2.5 out of 5. Take with that what you will. I feel like I just like ramble sometimes, and I'm trying to explain myself and I don't know if I made any sense. So if you need any clarification, just comment below. Alright book friends, that's it for today. If you have any questions or comments, or if you read the book and you wanna, you know, give your opinion, comment below. And also, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, until next time. Bye!